Hey there, hello, Sindre here. What I'm about to tell you is so controversial that many students in the past have called for me being fired. We're going to talk about the most controversial aspect of teaching in a university course, and that is the workload. How much effort are students supposed to dedicate to studying? Let's talk about it. So the main idea or point of departure is that there should be some sort of standard in terms of workload, because it's important to be able to compare university degrees from university to university, both within a country and across the nation's borders. So in Europe, we have a standard. We describe courses, the workload of the courses, with something called ECTS. And the main idea behind the standard is that the workload of a full-time student should be equal to the workload of a full-time employee per year. Now, there's a problem with this standard. Presumably, there are some unintended consequences here. Many seem to believe that the workload of a full-time student per week should be equal to the workload of a full-time employee per week. But that is not the case. That would be what we call a fallacy of composition. It's only the annual workloads that are equal to each other. And unfortunately, because the student year is shorter than the work year, that means that the weekly workload, the workload per week, is going to be higher for the student compared to the employee. Now that is the main gist of the argument. But let me just give you more details here, because this problem is far worse than many actually realize. So let's just get into this. So first of all, how much does a full-time employee actually work per year? Since I'm teaching in Norway, we're going to take from this perspective of Norway. So here in Norway, according to legislation, like a full-time job, 100%, that is 37.5 hours per week. So that is 8 hours per day for 5 days a week, but you subtract 30 minutes of lunch break every single day for a total of 37.5 across 5 days. Now, a full year is 52 weeks, but you have 4 weeks of vacation. So the work year is actually 48 weeks. So that means if you take 37.5 hours per week and multiply it with 48 weeks per year, then you get 1,800 hours per year. So the workload of a full-time employee per year is 1,800 hours. Now, the work year, as I said, is 48 weeks. But how long is the student year? We're going to disaggregate this to look only at one semester. We're going to look at the autumn semester. Calculation will be similar for the spring semester, but I think autumn semester is going to illustrate the problem better here. So half a work year, that will be 48 hours divided by 2. So 24 weeks is the number of weeks in half a work year. But for a semester, half a student year, it's not going to be 24 weeks. It's going to be substantially shorter. So particularly for my university, and this could change a little bit from university to university, maybe from country to country, but I think it holds approximately true. So the end result here can vary a little bit. But at my university, we divide the semester into 2 parts. The first part is for lecturing, for teaching the students the curriculum. And the second part is about the students doing their exams, preparing for the exams and taking the exams. So the lecturing part of the autumn semester, that is 13 weeks. And the exam period is 4 weeks. So 13 plus 4, that will be 17 weeks. 17 weeks is less than 24 weeks. So obviously, the workload per week for a student will then, of course, become higher compared to that of a full-time employee. But there's an additional problem here. And that is the exam could occur at any point in time during that exam period. In a worst case scenario, or in the most extreme scenario here, the exam will actually occur on the very first day of the exam period, which means that the semester is then actually only 13 weeks long. In the opposite most extreme case, in the best case scenario, the exam will be on the last day of the exam period. So then the semester will be 17 weeks. So in the absence of any further information, we can expect the semester to last for half of that. So 13 weeks plus 4 weeks divided by 2, so 15 weeks. So expectation-wise, the autumn semester is actually only 15 weeks. So as we established, according to Norwegian legislation, the workload per week for a full-time employee is 37.5 hours. For the full-time student, that is going to be 900 hours. And 900 hours is just 1,800 divided by 2 because we're looking at one semester here. So 900 hours per semester divided by the number of weeks per semester. And for the autumn semester, that is expectation-wise 15 weeks. And 900 divided by 15 weeks, that is 60 hours per week. So we went from 37.5 hours, the workload for a full-time employee per week, to 60 hours per week, which is the workload then for a full-time student. And that is causing a lot of controversy and anger. So, so that is the gist of the problem. Let me also just add here about the ECTS. The workload of a course is described using what we call ECTS. So we could say that a course has 5 ECTS, or maybe 7.5 ECTS, or 10 ECTS, or maybe 30 ECTS. A full-time student is supposed to have a workload of 60 ECTS, and ECTS is an acronym for European Credit Transfer and Accumulation System. So 60 ECTS per year, that is the workload of a full-time student. So per semester, you're supposed to do 30 ECTS. Now, this is possible usually to do less or to do more, but a full-time student is supposed to do 30 per year, 30 per semester, for a total of 60. Now, this 60 ECTS, this number is completely arbitrary. We just picked some number, and presumably we picked 60 because it's a very divisible number. It can be divided by many nice numbers. We could instead have picked 100, of course. So again, that is just arbitrary. But that means that we take 1,800 hours, which is the workload of a whole year, divided by 60 ECTS, and then we get 30 hours per ECTS. So one ECTS has the workload of 30 hours. So if you're taking a course that has 5 ECTS, that's going to be 5 ECTS multiplied by 30 hours per ECTS, for a total of 150 hours of workload for that 5 ECTS course. If you had 10 ECTS course, well, then it would be twice that. It would be 300 hours. And if you're doing a master thesis which has 30 ECTS, then that would be 900 hours. So that is how the ECTS system works. So that is the standard. As I said, the main idea is that the workload of a full-time student should be equal to the workload of a full-time employee. Unfortunately, it seems that it wasn't taken into consideration here that the student year or semester is shorter. Therefore, the workload per week becomes larger for the student compared to the employee, even though on aggregate per year the workload is the same. And that is kind of a big of an issue. So this is causing a lot of grief when I am lecturing. Students are usually very upset about this, but that is just how the standard and the system work. Okay, so the implication of the standard is that you're supposed to, as a full-time student, work 60 hours per week. Are students actually doing that? No, that does not seem to be the case. So based on surveys, it seems on a national level, the typical students is studying. This varies slightly from year to year and quite a lot from study program to study program. But on average, it seems that around 35 hours is usually what students spend on studying. So out of those, so pretty close to what a full-time employee is doing per week. So in terms of organized teaching activities, such as lectures in the classroom or the auditorium, on average, the students are actually spending more around 16 hours in the classroom, or with organized teaching activities. There's a rule of thumb that basically says that you should maybe spend 1.5 hours to study on your own for every hour of lecture. So if you did that with 16 hours organized teaching activities, then you would actually sum up to 40 hours. A full-time student is, in praxis, empirically speaking, behaving more or less exactly like a full-time employee on a week-to-week basis. So, am I really saying though that my students should spend 60 hours per week? No, I'm not saying that. Just to be clear, I'm just saying that the standard is saying so. And whether or not a course coordinator really wants to follow the standard, I guess that is up to each and every single one of them. So no public statements about that from me, what I'm doing in my course. Just to be clear. It's just the standard saying it, and not necessarily saying the same thing. Not necessarily. So yeah, good luck. Good luck if you are a student.